we can play better. Yeah, you can play better, but Tom Brady was almost flawless.
Okay, so his leading receiver on that October 14th Sunday night was Rob Gronkowski, who caught only 3 balls, but for 97 yards. Do you think Gronk will have 97 yards worth of catches at Kansas City on Sunday night? I don't think so. I just don't think. I think he's a broken down shell of himself. Yeah. He caught 1 ball the other day, and the whole stadium went crazy. Like, oh, we remember him, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you trust this? And by the way, Josh Gordon played that night and caught 5 balls for 42 yards. At least he was a threat.
Remember the one he caught between the two where he went up over both of them and caught the ball for a
touchdown. He did.
touchdown.
So at least he was drawing attention in the secondary, right?
Yes.
Absolutely.
He is obviously no longer a New England Patriot. I think Rob Gronkowski is basically no longer a New England Patriot. So now it's down to Edelman and James White. That night they caught 4 balls and 5 balls for 54 yards and 53 yards. Okay, he just kind of mixed and matched it. Chris Hogan caught 4 balls for 78 yards, so he did a little more damage. Can those 3 do enough damage at Kansas City? I don't know. And how much better can the defense play at Kansas City on Sunday night than they did on October 14th? I just don't know, because Sammy Watkins wasn't much of a factor, and all of a sudden he's breaking back out for them. He's starting to really cause problems.
Well, the thing is, James, Sonny Michel,
he's been there most of the year. Yeah.
He's going to run the ball really well. But Tom Brady, look, Tom Brady does not, the thing that you have to love most about him is that he doesn't try to have, y'all give me the short stuff. Oh, y'all want to take away everything deep. Well, I'm going to go deep. I'm going to show you I can get the deep ball. So I said, okay. Y'all want to take away the deep stuff? Okay, fine.
Good evening. Let me know if you can hear me out there in Village Land. Can you hear me? Good evening. Let me know if you can hear me out there. You can hear me. I can see that because I can hear myself. Join us. No. Oh, that would be terrible if I posted that in that one. Good Lord. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I know everybody's favorite subject, but we do got to talk about that Gillette commercial. We have to. We have to. We have to deal with the Gillette commercial. Because not necessarily the topic itself, but the responses to the commercial is more what's interesting to me than let me tell everybody here, link that on Facebook, publish now. Okay, now I can get back to my folks. What commercial? Do we really? Perkinos. Well, it's a hot topic. Well, it's not so much the commercial as it is the response to the commercial that's fascinating to me. Because there are a lot of dudes that seem to be really upset. I kind of eye rolled when I saw the commercial. It seemed kind of social justice.
People they're upset about it?
Dudes are, yeah.
Why?
Dudes are really angry about.
What's the reason for being upset about it?
I don't know. Maybe they're tired of hearing about toxic masculinity. I think the biggest thing that I see with toxic masculinity is that
That's really annoying to me.
it seems like they're interpreting it as, well, I'm gonna save my my.
There's
thingamajig.
been so much like oppression with women over the years. I mean, we couldn't vote for the longest time and all that, and you get a little bit of scrutiny in your direction and you're whining about it.
Well,
What?
I'm not. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. There was some of the Me Too stuff in there. There was, I don't know. We'll talk about it. Of course, men are mad. Hey, everybody, what's up, De Herrera? I think we'll be able to have some real contradicting ideas here. I miss you too, Alec, you bum. That's why I've been messaging you, coming up with reasons to text you, because you don't talk to me anymore. You're too busy being a world-famous scientist to care about the little people. You should still think about your friends. Work-life balance, Alec. Let me talk to Sori. I have ideas.
Yeah, well, call in.
Call in. What ideas? What's good, Dirk? I don't watch TV, so I'm out of the loop about this commercial. I first received knowledge of the commercial. My big homie, what's his name? Chad. Chad hooked me up with the commercial. And my initial was to like roll my eyes and go, oh my gosh. But I was very, very surprised. What's up, Holly Hawks? Did you reduce your Patreon account like I commanded you to on Twitter? I need you to go in there and reduce your Patreon account. Anna Kasparian was in the video, which automatically gave it a leftist bent. I agree with that. I agree. I question the wisdom of putting Kasparian in there. All right, Stevie D's calling you. Who's on the line?
What's going on?
What's going on? I think you want to talk to Sori, so go for it.
Hey,
Hey, Sori, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Living life. Doing the best we can, I guess.
I hear
But,
you.
yeah, so you got a problem with people whining about getting scrutiny for toxic masculinity.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Because what women have been dealing with over the years, like, because of masculinity. Now, you have to understand, I am totally fine with masculinity. I love masculinity. If I didn't, I wouldn't have married Vin. But when it does get to a toxic point, which, like we've seen in the Me Too movement has brought out stuff, to kind of bring awareness and stuff like that. Like, I think that that's great. And I just think that women have suffered so much over the years that one little commercial and you guys are whining. I just think that it's crazy.
I don't think it's just a commercial. It's kind of like a jump-off platform. I mean...
It's kind of what?
It's kind of a jump-off platform for kind of where this whole movement is headed. The whole Me Too and everything else.
Where is it headed?
It's headed towards ostracization. I can't speak. But, yeah, I mean, it's just ostracizing males. And I mean, so I'm not advocating, obviously, any inappropriate or ridiculous behavior, because I think that should be up to, I mean, a point that the commercials they make is, I think we should regulate our own. I think that is a very big part of why things get out of hand, is because maybe in context some things are okay, and then in context they're not. The whole Trump room talk thing. Yeah, guys talk like that all the time with each other. It's messing around. It's posturing. It's there's a lot of different elements to that, and it goes back to what male nature is. But before I get into that tirade, I just think that in a public setting or in a not private setting, that should be curbed, and it shouldn't be allowed, and it shouldn't be accepted. So some of it is the fault of us just not regulating our own. so to speak. But I don't know. I like to think abstract. I'm kind of over the deep end on a lot of things sometimes. But I mean, if you look at the way society's evolved and what we are as people, and then I've talked to you a little bit, and I've talked to Vin a little bit about human nature and instinct. Like, we're programmed a very certain way based on our DNA. Our society has kind of evolved into this thing that our human nature doesn't jive with. So you want to talk about toxic masculinity? Well, I mean, you know, the protector, the hunter-gatherer, the male figure, as it were, chemically and otherwise, is we're geared towards, you know, violence. We're geared towards aggression. You look at, you know, any male-dominated animal in the animal kingdom, and they act similarly. Even female-dominated hyenas have an alpha female, and they act in the same sort of way that you would consider toxic masculinity, but they're female. I mean, you know, the male lion being one of the low-hanging fruit examples. I mean, you know, they vie for dominance, and then once a certain male or a young male in a pride reaches a certain age, they challenge for leadership, and they do it violently. They do it physically.
So, are you referencing the two boys that were fighting in that Gillette commercial, and then they stopped them at the end? Is that the part you're not happy with? I'm confused at what people are not liking about the commercial.
Oh, the commercial in general is I mean, it's any generalization, really. And generalization, nobody wants to be generalized. Nobody wants to be thrown in a group of, you know, whatever. We were talking on the group earlier today about something that happened, and it's like, I don't want to be associated with this guy because he doesn't know how to regulate himself. So when you say toxic masculinity, like, we're all masculine in a certain way. We all have the same, to a degree, you know, makeup, DNA, and instinctual behavior. But I don't want to be grouped into this guy's group because he said something, did something inappropriate, and now, you know, created this stigma, I guess, on what, you know, behavior is. Because guys, they are what they are, just like women are what they are.
Yeah, but there's a difference between masculinity and toxic masculinity.
Sure.
You know, masculinity, if you want to talk about men with violence or something like that, and you think about, you know, like, where, you know, like Vin will talk about, like, getting between, so if somebody's getting aggressive toward a woman or toward another person, and you put yourself in between that situation, like, that's a great place for masculinity. But, like, making women feel uncomfortable because you're expressing things about their bodies, or, you know, and you see it a lot and hear it a lot, depending on what type of woman you are and what your body build is. So I think that the only part of the commercial that I was kind of like, was when they stopped the two boys from fighting, because I've seen people who have never been allowed to be in physical altercations, and then when they grow to be men, and then they're in a situation where somebody's getting aggressive around their family, they're very uncomfortable, and they don't even know how to handle themselves, because even as a child, they weren't even in physical altercations with another male. So I wouldn't necessarily stop the two boys. If it was getting out of hand, I would, you know, step in. But boys just wrestling around and having a little, I would let that go. But I don't see anything. I'm still trying to understand, what about the commercial was offensive to men? Is it that, I mean, you would agree that there are men that are toxic, that say things that are very inappropriate toward women?
Well, I mean, sure, but that you can make that argument, you know, towards women as well.
Yes.
You can make that argument towards anybody.
Well,
so, I mean,
yes, you can.
idea that masculinity, I mean, have you ever heard the term toxic femininity?
Yes, but the thing is, the men have had the power over the years, where if a woman wanted to get certain places, a lot of times she had to use her body as a means to get there, and men knew that, and that's why over the years there was so much of that going on, and now there's being a stop to it. But I guess I'm confused, like, you're either like, are you being a toxic male or are you not? Like, are you the type of person that is, degrading women publicly and saying things, or are you the type of guy that doesn't do that sort of thing? And if you're not the type of person that does that, then like, why get offended by it if that's not you? Like, this commercial, I think, was specifically toward men. Like, I feel like that they were clear with what sorts of men that they were speaking out against and what type of masculinity is not okay in our society.
Well, I mean, there's, the line of men behind a grill just chanting, boys will be boys, in the same scene where they're fighting, things like that. I mean, it's not that I'm trying to advocate the behavior. It's the context of demonizing masculinity as a whole, because there's no definitive line of what is toxic and what is not. Like, nobody ever
I would agree with that.
This is the border right here.
Yeah,
it
seems very subjective.
So, in a subjective stance, you're essentially grouping everybody into that same category. Like, I fight. I like to fight. I train for it. I do it as a sport. I just beat people up on the street. But that's a masculine behavior, and I mean that could be considered toxic because I'm hitting people for sport.
I mean, yeah, I guess the line isn't really clearly drawn. Because in my opinion, somebody who's doing what you're explaining is one thing. Toxic masculinity is when a man puts his hands on a woman and says, well, she said this or she said that or did this or did that. Like, there is nothing under no circumstances that a man should put his hands on a woman like that.
Okay,
so,
I'm on the American Psychological Association. They just released a new guideline on... They don't call it masculinity. They call it... I forgot what the term is. So let me read something because they've got some masculinity ideology is what they call it.
Who are these people?
This is the American Psychological Association.
Okay.
Whatever. Although there are differences in masculinity ideologies, there is a particular constellation of standards that have held sway over large segments of the population, including anti-femininity, achievement, eschewal of the appearance of weakness, and adventure, risk, and violence. These have been collectively referred to as traditional masculinity ideology. So there it is. Anti-femininity, meaning not acting feminine if you're a guy. Achievement, which is a thing, being a goal-oriented person. Eschewal of the appearance of weakness, not crying, men don't cry or whatever.
What they're saying.
Adventure.
Which group are they saying is saying this?
This is traditional masculinity ideology, which the APA is saying is destructive to men. So these are the parameters. Because Steve was saying, so it's the anti-femininity, achievement, meaning being a goal-oriented person, achieving a goal, eschewal of the appearance of weakness, adventure, risk, and violence.
Gosh, no, you can't take all this away from them. What the heck?
Well, so there you go, Steve.
No, but that wasn't in that commercial, except for the boys wrestling. It seemed to me from what I noticed of the commercial, and maybe I missed stuff, the thing that it was focusing on to me was, saying stuff to women as they're like walking by, or, you know what I mean? Like talking about women in like a very objective sort of way instead of actually seeing them as a human being.
Right. And I mean, again, I not advocating the action, but I like to default back to what nature is, like who we are. Men are physical people. Like, we experience the world in a very physical way. That's, the whole, the adventure, aspect of things, the accomplishment aspect of things. Little boys, you watch them play with the cars, it's an idiom, but, they make more sounds than words. Cars go vroom, guns go bang, little girls, stereotypically sit things down and they have conversation. They talk. They experience the world in an emotional way. And so they're two completely different ways to experience the world. And the idea that masculinity is toxic is basically you're a broken woman. You're a broken girl. That's how we're being portrayed or taught. And I mean, it's hard. I got 4 boys, and they come home with just some of the craziest things. I'm like, wow, one of them got in trouble for yelling because it was too aggressive. And I'm like, what?
Okay, well, I don't have the same.
I mean, it's just it's an example of the stupidity of it, I guess, in my opinion.
When was he yelling? Like, it was during class, or they're out on recess?
No, they were outside at lunch, I believe, and they weren't allowed to do something that involved a boundary, and so he was trying to protest. It was ridiculous, but basically that's what he was in trouble for, was yelling. I'm like, because it was considered aggressive behavior. That's basically what they told us. It was stupid, but I mean, yelling's aggressive. I mean, I don't know. Like, it's hard, I guess, for me, being on one side of the fence, not being able to understand the other side. Like, I can't say never, but I mean, it's never affected me to the extent of, like, being creeped out or made to feel uncomfortable with advancement or objectification, So, I mean, I can't put myself in that place to understand what that's like. But at the same time, is it not fair to say that not everybody operates on the same maturity level?
Yeah, but I think that's why they're saying you guys got to check each other, because a lot of times, like, if speaking personally, a lot of times there was, when other guys would say things or do things that I would see as inappropriate or make me feel very uncomfortable, there would be other men around in the area. So it would have been cool if the other men would have been like, no, like, that's not, like, like, I just remember, like, lots of instances feeling like I was just, I don't know, like, not a human being. Like, I'm an actual person, and, like, then you have to, sometimes you end up making choices, like, you have an outfit you want to wear that you love, but you don't want to wear it because you don't want to have any situations or have anybody say anything. So then you don't do that, and you have to kind of, like, I don't know, stifle who you are because you don't know what some other person is going to say out there. But if there was more of a respect for women out there, then, things would be different, on stuff like that. But I just think that, what they were saying in that, like, as far as, like, like squashing, like, if a guy has, like, some feminine tendencies, like, a lot of times, like, little boys will want to play with dolls, and parents will be like, no, you can't play with dolls. It's trucks and guns only. Like, I don't think that that's good, like, because he's going to grow up and be a father, hopefully. And if he does, like, he needs to learn how to care for a kid. So I wouldn't, like, do that. But I do think that respect for women should be something that is taught to our youngest of boys. And that should be something that's carried up throughout adulthood. Like, I feel like that the amount of people saying, inappropriate things to women, that needs to, like, dwindle down to be, like, that needs to be the minority rather than feeling like it's the majority sometimes.
Right, but I mean, okay, I agree. Wow, lost my train of thought. But I mean, how do you make it not feel like a majority unless you know for a fact that it is or is not a majority? You know what I mean?
It just depends on the person. Like, I think that if a girl is looked at as not appealing to the majority of society, then she might not be in a situation where that's going to happen to her. But if a woman is particularly beautiful or built a certain way, then it is going to feel like the majority, because every time she goes out in public, there's something being said, or there's a guy's acting a certain way and stuff. I have had a ton of experiences where it was not cool and I felt very uncomfortable. And so to me, it felt like, which is part of the reason why Vin will say it sometimes, he'll be like, oh, you just hate men. Like, I have a lot of reasons why I have a lot of negativity toward men, and
sure, but what you're talking about is almost a prejudice. And I mean, a lot of people, I mean, maybe even Vin could make the same argument about police. I've been in situations, not when it had to do with male-female attraction, not attraction, but, where my particular look or my particular skin color was not okay for the situation, and okay in air quotes, So, I mean, the idea that you can change everybody to suit what makes you comfortable, I think is my problem. Like, we've got to learn to thrive in a society of, if we're going to accept diversity, you got to accept some people are assholes. Like, it is what it is. You know, if you're going to,
Yeah, but you would
I'm
expect.
trying to say that.
But you would expect.
Like, just march on and deal with it, because I mean, it's not okay. Like, it's not okay to make somebody feel uncomfortable. Like, I'm not advocating that at all, but it is a thing that happens. And so to group everybody of a particular, in a group. Wow, my English is on point today. You know, of a particular whatever, to group people in ideas or in files. God, why can't I speak? I'm having a hard time. But you get what I'm saying, right? To
categorize a whole group of people because of some assholes.
Sure, we'll go with that word. Right. Like, I mean, that doesn't produce the desired outcome, right? Because basically now you're stifling or you're marginalizing or discriminating against a whole nother group because of what outliers do. And in the Marine Corps, we always talk about there's always going to be 10%, right? It's kind of a BS statistic, but the idea is that no matter how good a unit you are, no matter how good a squad or company or whatever, no matter how good you are, there's always 10% that's the fuck-ups. And the group pays for 10%.
Yeah.
Right? So we were always taught, keep those in. I don't know if you've ever seen Full Metal Jacket.
No.
You did. You just forgot.
It was a movie?
Yeah.
Formidable Jacket?
Full Metal Jacket.
Full Metal Jacket. A movie about Vietnam War.
We watched it together. Go ahead.
Anyway, there's a scene. The big guy, I can't remember the actor's name. Anyway, they call him Private Pile. He's messing up all the time, hiding food in his foot locker. He can't get drilled right. He kind of just sucks at everything.
Yes.
So they have what they call the towel party in one of the scenes where they hold him down on the bunk and put soap in the towel and beat him.
Yes,
like,
I remember that.
Regulate it your own. Like, that's what we were taught. There's always going to be that 10%. There's always going to be somebody fucking up. So if you don't want it to come down, you got to regulate it. And I think that's my stance, is that it shouldn't be everybody is in this category. Every aspect of masculinity is toxic.
Okay.
But at the same time, to get outside of that stigma, yeah, we should be able, especially with where we are evolutionarily, we should be able to regulate our own a little better.
I think, okay, so I can throw in with you on the 10% because, yeah, I would say it wasn't 100% of the men when I would go out in public that was making me feel a certain way. Like, let's just say that it was the 10%. It felt like more than 10%, but it probably really wasn't in all actuality. But I will say there was no regulation of their own. Like, that didn't happen. The first time that happened to me was when I got around Vin, and Vin, would say stuff, and I was like, whoa, like, what is this? Like, this is cool, because most other guys were saying, well, you shouldn't have worn that, or, well, you shouldn't have been talking to him that long, or you were laughing too much, or it was always my fault why the guy was saying something that was inappropriate. Rather than saying, no, like, he shouldn't have said that, like, that's on him. So Vin was go ahead.
Good. I was saying in that aspect, right? Like the whole argument that it's her fault, that's her fault, that. I mean, that comes from the idea that we don't understand how each other operate in the world. Like, you're made to feel a certain way as a woman because you experience the world in emotions and feelings. Like, I see things that I like. I want to touch it, grab it, move it, experience it physically. And those are two very different dynamics. And I don't think people factor that into anything. It's just, well, you were wrong because you made her uncomfortable. Well, she was wrong because she wore that. You see what I'm saying? It's kind of the same on both sides. It's just one's considered a perpetrator and therefore is demonized.
I disagree, because people have boundaries, and like especially because if that was just the way that it was, then why weren't people saying that when I was with it was always when I was by myself. But if I had a man with me, then the stuff wasn't really getting said. So it's like, oh, okay, so you do understand some boundaries because I'm wearing the same thing today as I was last week, but now I have a man standing beside me. So now all of a sudden it's something different. And I feel like it comes down to like viewing women not as actual people, but objectifying them and seeing them as possessions. So, oh, well, she belongs to him, so I'm going to have to like pull back on what I would say if she wasn't with him cuz she belongs to him. No, like I'm a human being. I don't belong to anybody. It just happens we're together, but I'm not his possession. We're both
Sure,
people.
but again, defaulting back to you know, nature and instinctive behavior and things like that, like the male role is you know, protection
From who?
pride, protection of family, protection of whatever. So I
Like
mean, I don't
Steve,
necessarily think, yeah,
I agree. My role is to protect, right?
right,
Who am I protecting her from mainly?
everybody else.
No, that's not true.
I-
Like if I walk
Okay,
down the street.
wait, are we talking instinctively or just you walking down the street?
No, I'm just saying really on a practical level. Like who would I have to protect her from?
Outside threats, whatever you perceive that to be.
Okay, and who is that most likely to be?
Other males.
Okay. So if a dude breaks in the house and wants to rape my wife, I'm not going to kill him because you guys know how I feel about killing people. But I'm going to exert some energy in order to stop that from happening, right?
Sure.
Okay, I don't think the Gillette commercial is against that. What I do think the Gillette commercial is against is the dude who's going to break in to rape my wife.
Well, I think everybody should be against that, but then that goes into what we're taught. Going back to what Sori said, being taught respect for people, because I mean, you know, everybody. I'm assuming maybe this is a big assumption, but I'm assuming everybody has had a thought about another person that may or may not be objectifying. I'm going to say is objectifying, but did it come out of your mouth and did you act on it?
Well, I think my point is I don't understand, and some of this might have to do with being black in America, where you get generalized all the time, and so you're just used to it. But I don't really understand what the issue is. When I hear toxic masculinity, I don't hear that I'm toxic just for being masculine. What I hear is the dude who wants to break into my house and sexually assault my wife is a toxic individual. And I don't think that Gillette would say that me going in the middle of that and neutralizing that threat, I don't think Gillette would say, or even the APA would say, that I'm being toxic in that moment. Do you?
I don't know, but I want to touch on something you just said. You know, they're saying the person breaking, you said the person breaking your house is a toxic individual.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah.
Not a toxic man, but a toxic individual. So if the person breaking in your house who wanted to do harm to your wife was a woman, would you act the same way?
No.
You wouldn't?
No. Sori can handle her own business if it's another woman, believe me. I'm just telling you I'm telling you the God's honest truth. And the thing
sure,
for me,
and I believe you because I mean that's it. That's you, man. You do you.
But
I can't say
here's the
I
thing
wouldn't
for me.
operate that way. I'll put somebody down a heartbeat, protecting my entire family. Like I don't care. But I mean, me and you have very different reserves on levels of violence we're willing to go to and on who. So
right, but Steve, here's the thing though. It's not, and people are saying, what about toxic femininity? I feel like I deal with toxic femininity anytime I talk about abortion. But, Steve, 90% of the people that would break into a person's house are male, right?
Sure, it's an aggressive act, and then
It's probably 98%. Okay, so, like, to me, I'm a little bit, and I was purposely quiet listening to both of you talk because I'm a little bit confused here. Because I think all of us know that there are certain types of actions and subcultures that are perpetrated that are almost exclusively male.
Sure.
Robbing a bank, most likely going to be a dude. Blowing up an airplane, most likely a dude. Breaking into a house, most likely a dude. So help me understand when it's mostly men doing this, all the active shooter situations last year were 100% male, why are we upset when that type of constellation of behaviors gets codified as toxic? It's not as if women are committing these acts at the same rate. It's not even close.
No, but I mean, but have you compared that to emotional studies? Again, men are physical creatures. We do things, we operate, we understand on a physical level. So these actions you've all explained are very physical.
Well, yeah, and they leave people dead, though.
But, yeah, but I mean, how many fathers drown their kids? How come postpartum doesn't apply to males?
Because they weren't pregnant.
Yeah, but are you saying that women are drowning children at the rate that men are committing violent crimes that lead to people's death? I mean, I'm not making an argument. I'm really trying to hear you out.
No. I'm not equating that at all. What I'm saying is it's different because the male and female genetics are different. Like that's what I'm saying is we operate differently.
No, I agree with that. But what I'm saying is there's a certain group of actions that are happening that are almost exclusively male.
Right. They're physical, they're violent, and they're aggressive. Like, those are all things that a male needs in nature to operate.
Yeah, but he doesn't need to break into somebody's house. So if I were to say, if I were to tell my son...
I see what you're saying.
If I were to tell my son...
Because I think I know where you're going. And what I'm saying is, like, you're taking the action of a person.
No, I'm not.
And
no. I'm not taking the action of a person. What I'm saying is, statistically speaking, we are overrepresented by about 90 to 10% in certain types of crime. So if I pull my son aside and I say, "Look, son," and in part of this, Steve, to me is a language thing, and here's what I mean by that. And let me know if you agree with this. If I take my son and I say, "Son, you are always, generally speaking, you're always going to be stronger than any woman that you're around, generally speaking. And God gave you that strength in order to protect women, not to abuse them." Now, a real man is going to protect a woman to the point where he lays down his life for her. A person who's not a real man, a person who's a coward, is a person who would harm a woman. So, you have real men in the world, and then you have false men and cowards in the world. And you can tell the difference by how they treat people weaker than them. Now, would that be something constructive to say to my son?
would it be constructive?
Would that be a good thing to say to my son?
From me personally, yes. I would 100% agree with that. I can't... I'm trying to think of how society would look at that, but I can't say for sure. Okay. But for me, yeah, I've told my kids very similar things.
Okay.
And I say it repeatedly because, I mean,
right.
That's how I grew up.
Okay, so what's the difference? Yeah. What's the difference between you telling your son there are real men and there are cowardly men, and a psychologist telling us that there are beneficial men and toxic men? I don't really see the difference, because to me it seems like we're saying the same thing.
The words carry different connotations, I guess. I don't know if I ever would say, I don't agree with the idea that you're not a man because you hit a woman. You're not a man because of this. No, you're a weak individual. You're a shitty person. But I mean, I hate the term man up. When people say that, I want to punch them in the face. Especially, sorry, but when women say it, you don't know jack shit one about being a man, so don't tell me to man up. But, I mean, the term is used to toughen up, right? Man up, toughen up, suck it up.
Right.
But that term is okay. It's okay to say that, and it's okay for a woman to say that. It's okay for a woman.
Why does the term... Hey, Mike Kilberry, do me a favor and call me, because Mike's got a different connotation here. Go ahead.
I can wait for the call.
Keep going, Steve.
I kind of made my point with that. I wasn't really going to take it any further. But to your point of what's the difference, I guess I always default to people's patterns of behavior, their human nature, because I think, to me, that's the most interesting and overlooked aspect of our existence. So I'm going to go back to that again, right? And so when you have like the scene with the two boys wrestling or scuffling or whatever, right? There's going to be a winner and a loser. There was one kid on top and one kid on bottom.
Right.
So you have an alpha and a beta.
Right.
Well, what happens to beta when he's a beta over and over and over again? When he doesn't reach, he's not the first kid on the football team. He's the last kid to get picked. He still has those masculine behaviors, but his experiences they've diminished them, I guess. And so, who do you dominate? Where's your outlet when that's you, and it's the weaker? That's where you get bullying, right? Like, this kid's dad slaps him around, so he goes to school and picks on little kids.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I just the other part of this to me that's very interesting is the way that men have reacted is extremely emotional.
Yeah.
Very, very emotional. And to me, it's like, it's almost self-defeating. It's like, on the one hand, you're saying, I'm not saying you, but on one hand, I'm this big masculine man, but then on the other hand, you're upset about a 1.5-minute commercial. Mm-hmm. And you're, I'm not going to buy your products anymore. Like, that to me is just, and this might be my own form of toxic, but that's just weak to me. Mm-hmm. Like,
I agree.
They shot a commercial for 1.5 minutes, and now you're so emotional. I think Ray posted a meme where it's like, these dudes are like, these are the same people who've been calling other people snowflakes and saying that they can't handle adversity, and now a commercial comes out and they're all emotional and up in arms and getting extremely, like, I'm looking at some of these comments that was left at on Gillette's Twitter, and it's like, it's insane to me. Like, these dudes are really, really done with your products. I will share this information daily on social media. Like, really? Like, are we that fragile? Like, that's
like, in society, I'd say yes, we are, very much so.
No, Peter, hold on for a second. Peter, I'm not saying men can't be emotional. What I am saying, though, is that the same people who are calling people snowflakes and projecting all of this masculinity are now throwing a hissy fit when this commercial comes out. And that, to me, doesn't match. If you're going to be, if you got all that gangsta in you, then you should be able to handle some criticism. And if it's wrong, just move on. Mm-hmm. But I'm very fascinated by the reaction. I've already had the toxic masculinity discussion, and I'm still really unclear about why people are offended by it. So, but the reaction to the commercial, the way that the emotional reactions from people who are saying that they're
I didn't know you had this view on it. I thought that you had like
what view?
Being surprised at people's reactions and thinking it's a little over the top.
I'm very surprised by the reactions. I'm very surprised at how
you obviously know how I am.
I'm very surprised at how offended people are by this commercial. Mm-hmm. I just thought people were going to roll their eyes and say, "Oh God, here we go again." I didn't know dudes were going to be this up in arms about it.
What's happening here?
Okay.
We're not leaning towards a "here we go again," though. I mean, it's becoming very, very mainstream. Like, if you took it, it's like, what I would call kind of the war on Christianity right now. You say you're a Christian, oh God, 7 ways from Sunday, you're going to get attacked for having a belief.
I know, believe me.
If I say I believe in fucking aliens, I watch Ancient Aliens, I believe every word out of that stupid ass show. Oh, that's cool, Ancient Aliens, yeah. But oh God, say Christ, and you're a freaking idiot, and I can't believe you would believe. I mean, yeah, I know you guys hear it all the time, I'm sure, especially in the comments because I read some of them, and I guess what I'm getting at is, like, that's where we're at now. And, I mean, that's a whole nother discussion as to how we got there and why, as far as theoretically, but...
Steve, stay on the line. We got another toxic male. Is this Mike?
Yeah, hey, Ben, how's it going?
Hey, buddy.
Hey.
Okay, so you've got a different perspective on this. So what do you got, bruv?
Okay, well, I mean, for me, I was was raised. My dad's retired police officer. So I was raised to respect women and be the man's man and do all the manly stuff like go shoot, go to the shooting range, play hockey, all this stuff. But I wasn't the type of kid that was into that. I was very reserved, and I found out late, like when I got into my early teenage years, that I actually have a chromosome abnormality called Klinefelter syndrome, which is I have the extra X chromosome. So there was a lot of physical attributes that were delayed, and my parents originally thought that it was just late bloomer, so on and so forth. But there was a lot of other issues that were underlining with it.
Mike, I'm not familiar with this extra X chromosome. What does that mean for you? Like, isn't there like X and Y, and one is male, one is female?
But I'm an XXY, so I have an extra chromosome, which causes a lot of biological abnormalities to the typical male. Like for sterility is that's one of the things that I have. So due to that.
Oh.
But
so is X female and Y male?
Yes, that's why I have the extra female.
Oh, okay, all right. I didn't understand what you were saying. I got you now. Okay, Go ahead.
So I have a lot. So I'm a little more. I'm a little more in tune with with women. Like that's why I have a lot of female friends. I have a lot of guy friends too now, but that's taken with a lot of patience over the years from a lot of my guy friends because they realize, hey, he's not like the rest of us. Over the years, I basically was picked on by my dad for that because I wasn't man enough. He pushed me into to weightlifting. He pushed me into all these manly sports manly things that I didn't want to do. But because I was young, it's like I was brought up to honor my mother and my father. I went and did it, and which caused a lot of friction between me and my dad. So growing up, when I got older, I started rebelling with the whole, with the drinking and everything. And when I was doing the drinking, I took on the persona of the typical male. I kind of copied the guys that I hung around with, pushing down the person who I really am, which, like I said, I'm more. I don't like guys that don't pick on women for one, but I will stick up for them, and it infuriates me when I see people that go, well, you're a guy, you're supposed to do this, you're supposed to, stick up for your race, your other males, and it's like no, if they're gonna do something that's against my morals or morals in general, I'm gonna tell it like it is. Mm-hmm. And I got questioned about my due to my condition. I got judged, and a lot of people thought I was gay growing up. And it was hard. It was hard because, when you're a kid, you don't really understand.
Yeah.
And my parents never really understood. Like they got told from the doctors and everything, but there was a lot my parents didn't tell me. Like I didn't find out until I was older. I started researching it myself and going, okay, well, there's learning disability, and then there's physical, like one of the conditions I have with this is osteoporosis, and like that's to explain why I've had all these injuries growing up, all these broken bones. Because my bones are, yeah, broken feet, broken hips, so on and so forth. I mean, I've just been a physical train wreck. I fractured my pelvis in 2017, and they said that's when they're like, well, yeah, well, you have osteoporosis, and I was like,
Oh my gosh.
shit, didn't know that. And they're like, you have the bone density of an 80-year-old man, and I'm only 44.
Whoa.
So, you know, it makes you wonder, like, you know, I always say I didn't ask for this, right? I didn't ask to be this way. I always wanted to be a normal kid growing up. I wanted to be able to do all those things that everybody else did, you know.
Yep.
Playing sports and stuff, but I couldn't. And so I got pigeonholed into like, oh, he's a loser. Oh, he's this. Oh, we'll stick him over here with the, I don't like using the R word, but the retards.
Yeah.
And everyone started treating me with kid gloves and calling me the special kid. And I wasn't. I was just a little slow due to everything. So when everyone noticed that I was hanging around with girls more than I were the dudes, they were starting to wonder. And it's just because I could relate to them more, but it's because of my condition.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, I've adapted though. I've got a lot of guy friends now, and they understand. I mean, the ones that really want to know, like, I'll explain to them. I'll tell them what's going on, and know what my condition is, and they're just like, wow. They're like, that's kind of they're kind of taken aback at first, but then they're like, it's kind of cool at the same time because you see it from both sides of the fence, right? They're like you're so emotional, but at the same time you're very passionate about everything that you stand up for. So like when I see a guy that, you know, smacks a woman around, you know, I get really really defensive about that. I've stuck up for a few female friends that have been in abusive relationships, and then, you know, when the cops come, and I had the cops come one time, and they had to break us up, and they looked at me and they looked at him and they arrested him. So, because they're like, oh, well, he doesn't look like he can fight his way out of a paper bag.
Oh gosh.
But I was just like, okay, thanks. And here I am. I wasn't skinny, but yeah. But I mean, there's just kind of like, okay, the cops didn't even think twice about him. Oh, he might be the aggressor.
So yeah, Ian, call in.
All right. Well, thanks, guys.
Yeah. Well, I think Ian wanted to talk to you a little bit.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool.
Because Steve, you're still on the line too, right?
Yeah, I'm still here. All right.
Yeah. So we're gonna have Ian call in, and then it'll be my turn. But go ahead, Ian, call in now. Oh, did you bring me a soda? Oh my goodness, I can't believe this. My toxically feminine daughter. Come
I
here,
told her to bring it in.
Oh, okay, here you go. Come
Because
here.
it was the truth, Zoe.
Hey.
Hello?
There
Hey,
you go,
how's it
Mr.
going?
Aspie. Talk to me. You're on with your buddy Mike.
Hey, Mike, how's it going, brother?
Hug him. I don't know what he wants.
Good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I related a lot to what you were saying, and I was sort of desperate to call in to give the other side of it, which you've sort of touched upon. But the whole perceived idea of what masculinity is can be a very damaging thing, for sure. Because I get what you're saying. Because I've, like, as most of you know, for those that don't, I'm autistic. I have Asperger's syndrome. I'm much better at it now that I'm 35. But when I was younger, I didn't know how to fit in. I didn't know how to accept certain constructs, and I too really, really gravitated towards the company of females because they generally don't buy into all of that shit. You know, like if a man cries, women instinctively like be kind to them, you know, whereas if a dude cries around other men, they're instinctively nasty about it because men don't cry, you know. So, and it's okay to be an emotional person around women, But there's this is where toxic masculinity comes in from a subjective point of view, and where it becomes toxic internally. Because I found one of the biggest problems with this whole toxic masculinity shit is that men don't know how to process their feelings. That's why they're more aggressive, because they can't process them, and they feel this frustration, and they don't necessarily have an outlet for it. And if you're not on the fringes like me, and you can't just accept that you're not going to fit in, you have this desperate need to fit in, therefore you have to quell these despicable feelings lest a man should cry or express emotion, because that would never do, and it's I have legit, the number of times I've been bullied for being gay, even though I'm not, just because I'm a crier. I'll put it out there. I'm with Sori. I'm a crier, right? And the number of times that people have called me a pussy or a fag or gay or some other horrible put down line because men can't cry. But you know what? If we got rid of this societal bullshit that and actually men could cry without any recrimination, I legit believe there'd be far less violence and trouble in the world. I legit mean that.
Totally.
But maybe that's just me as an outsider, but it bothers me intensely, because I have seen victims of it. I've seen people who cannot process their emotions, and I have it the other way, because I process my emotions too intensely, so they become too much for me to handle. And I'm not saying that's healthy either, but it's taken me a long time to come to terms with this and come to the sort of self-realization that it's okay. That's why this issue is so dear to my heart, because it's probably the thing I've been bullied about the most, is my inability to fit in with this masculine construct. So one of the main things I wanted to call in about was just to challenge the idea of what it is to be masculine. So I'm not saying that both genders need to be the same. I'm all for equality in terms of rights and social equality, but there's a very good reason why Vin made fun of that guy that said that the 250-pound man wouldn't stand a chance against a 150-pound woman that knew jiu-jitsu, because men are bigger. And I also agree with to an extent that not necessarily that men should protect women in that sense, but the strong should protect the weak. That is the incumbent thing. And actually, weirdly enough, it kind of even if you're a Christian, this is in the Bible. The weak protects the strong. The just stand up for the impure. That's how it's supposed to be. Even in the Spider-Man movies, with great power comes great responsibility.
Right.
That's why it's so fucked off at Trump when he mouths off and makes certain statements. And I'm like, no, if you're in a position where you're stronger than someone else, then it's incumbent, in whatever sense, because there are, while I agree that a woman who knows Brazilian jiu-jitsu would never stand a chance against a 250-pound man, should sure as shit beat the hell out of me. I'm just being honest. So it would be incumbent on her to not be cruel to me, just like it would be incumbent on me to not be mean to someone who couldn't stand up to me. I'm not wording this very well, but does that make sense? So I think where we've lost the line is that we assume that masculinity is strength, and in the physical sense that is true. It's just an imperative of nature that men are built a certain way. We build muscle mass more easily. We have a higher level of testosterone, which lends itself more easily to aggression. And ironically, through all this toxic masculinity thing, like if you adopt the atheistic point of view of evolution, it's kind of been turned upon itself backwards, because there's a very good reason why men are the hunters and women stay at home and look after the cubs. And it's not because women are weaker than men, it's because from an evolutionary point of view, they're far, far more valuable. The men go out and hunt because if one of them dies, then they're a dime a dozen in an evolutionary sense. You know, like another man can propagate the species by inseminating a woman, but without women to carry the babies, then the human race dies. So that's where this evolutionary thing comes from. And it just, I think we've really lost the way in what it means to be masculine. Now, I have nothing against masculine people at all. You know, be as masculine as you want, or the other way. But that's the point I'm trying to make, because it's not okay for a man to not be masculine in the current milieu that we're in. And the amount of flack I've had because I don't know how to be masculine in that traditional sense. You know, I can't be cock of the walk and be bravado and all that shit. I'm a very emotional person, as I'm sure you've all gathered by now. You know, and I'm not being funny. Like, it's probably the single most greatest source of bullying I've received in my life is because I don't know how to fit in with other men. And that's why I've received a great comfort in the company of women, because they don't judge you for that. But consequently, you instantaneously get judged for falling into that camp because you're not masculine. And it's this ultimate trap that absolutely fucks people up on both sides.
Wow.
Thank you.
Sorry, I don't mean to get around. I'll just say one last thing, like, because this is genuinely important to me. Like, I mean what I say, that it fucks people up on both sides, because I've seen this like as an outsider looking in, but subjectively, like, not all men at all. I'm not making a full generalization here, but like a lot of men, and particularly the more masculine they are, in air quotes, they have real trouble processing their emotions and admitting when they're sad, or crying when they feel the need to cry, or admitting that they're afraid when they're scared. But because of this, they then feel upset and belittled because they don't have an outlet for this, and they feel weak and pathetic and wrong. And therefore, by the constructs of hierarchy, when they see a man who is less masculine than them, and they feel that they can't process their emotions, it's almost instinctive to pick on the weaker man, because like, oh, you pussy, what are you doing crying, you gay lord, and all. And I'm quoting things that people have said to me, but deep down inside it's because they want to cry, and that's the shit that they've heard from other people. So they kind of spit the poison downwards to the weakest person. Anyway, I'll shut up. Sorry, I've ranted on. But it was important to me to say that. So thank you for letting.
Oh, thank you both. Seriously, it was important. It was very important. Thank you.
No.
I think he was saying thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, buddy.
I think that's a valid point, though.
Yeah, I just... And, you know, there's the what about toxic femininity? It's like, well, you know, we've been around for about 300 or 400 years as a country. We've never had a female president. The level of influence and power that men have exerted just in this country alone, forget world history, is enough to make me say that if I am toxic in an environment where men hold the most power, then obviously I'm going to have more effect on a given society, and so you take care of the biggest rock in the shoe. So I know that women can be toxic. The problem is that generally speaking, in world history and in our society, if men are the most influential members of the society, then you have to focus on them. And so obviously as a Christian, this gets heightened, because as a Christian, you're told that as a man, that God's going to hold you accountable for how you run your house. And you see the example that Adam and Eve, both of them sinned, but then Adam is the one that gets blamed for destroying the universe.
Yep.
And it's this weird thing to me where I feel like men love enjoying that position of power and privilege that we have because we generally have the power. We're represented all the time. The president's always gonna be. We just assume the president's gonna be a man, and we just have these positions of power. But then when we abuse our power, now we want to be equal with women. Well, I'll start talking about toxic femininity when half of the presidents are women. Right? Like, when women start being able to influence the society and hold powerful positions on a regular basis that's representative of how many women are in this country percentile-wise, I'll start talking about toxic femininity when that happens.
Plus,
but as long as we're the ones occupying the majority of the positions of power, it's ridiculous to me to say, well, what about the women? I don't understand that mentality.
Childish, like, when you think about it, because, like, when we call one of our kids in and we say, okay, why did you do X, Y, and Z thing? And they say, yeah, well, so-and-so's been doing blah, blah, blah. Like, that's not what the conversation is. We're talking about you and your issues and what you've done. We're not talking about the other guy. And so, like, here's this opportunity where toxic masculinity is being talked about. And then instead of saying, yeah, this is a problem, or maybe you don't feel like this is a problem, like, instead of talking about the actual issue on hand, instead it's like, well, women are toxic too. Like, can you just focus on the issue at hand and stop trying to point blame at other people? Like, recognize what your issues are as men and then go on from there.
Yes, Tim, I buy into the victim scale. Women have not been treated. Women have had to fight like hell to even be able to vote.
Right.
This is the other thing. Is, oh, here you're a victim. Yes, we've victimized women in our country. Absolutely. That's why there was a feminist movement. They've been victims. Now, God bless them. They survived and they demanded their seat at the table, and they've made progress. But to think that, oh, it's 2019, we're good to go, is insane. Did you see the R. Kelly documentary?
Oh my gosh.
It's 2019. That dude's still walking the streets after all the evil shit he did to all those little girls.
And is still doing.
What are you talking about? Of course. I don't understand this stuff. Now, look, here's what I'll say. This is not... I don't think anybody's going to agree with me, but, if I'm going to tell my son, if you're walking down the street and you're going those Brazilian jiu-jitsu and she's better than you, like you guys roll around and she's always getting you in a clinch or whatever, I don't give a damn. If a dude jumps out of the woods with a knife, you put yourself between yourself and that female, even if she's better than you, even if she physically has a better chance, because I think that part of being a man is that is your duty and your role. You interpose yourself. You put yourself in danger for the sake of your lady, even if she can beat you up. I'm not a pragmatist. I feel like that's our role. But I do feel like, for example, the kids are fighting on the ground. I wouldn't necessarily break that up and say we don't do that.
Right. Yeah.
I think there has to be a certain type of ruggedness with boys. And I'm not saying that because, real men don't cry, because David in the Bible, and I know some of you don't accept the Bible as truth, but here's my paradigm for masculinity. So you had this guy, David, and he was the number one warrior, special forces soldier in the Bible.
Right.
And he was daring. He took a lot of risks. Excellent warrior, amazing warrior. But on the other side, he played a harp and he cried in public. And when his best friend died, Jonathan, he said he cried publicly and wrote a poem for him and said, Jonathan, your love was better to me than women.
Yep.
So much so that people are like speculating, oh my God, is he gay? So that's my paradigm for being a man, is that you should be able to go to war in whatever context is appropriate, but you should also be the type of person that when your best friend dies, they question whether or not you're gay. You should be that open and loving, yes, to another man. This idea that men can't cry and especially express emotion to other men, I believe, is toxic.
Yeah,
And
I
there's
agree.
been a version of manhood and masculinity that has been perpetrated that I don't think is right. So this idea you can't express affection to other men, you can't tell men you love them, you can't hug them, you can't kiss them, you can't cry, you can't do anything, you know, like Ian was talking about, and the other guy, you
Yeah.
have to avoid the specter of being
Yeah, that was
gay
Mike.
and all this. It's like, I think all of those are paradigms of masculinity that are bad and dangerous and destructive. You know, Dorian is an extremely emotional kid. He's very physical. He likes playing football. You know, he's very into football and all that, but he's more into the cerebral part of football. He
Yep.
doesn't like getting hit.
No.
Johan likes getting hit. Dorian likes the strategic. Man, he'll cry in a second. And, you know, that's him. But on the other hand, here's the other thing where I do believe in the phrase man up. And I do believe in the phrase suck it
Yeah,
up.
I've never said that.
She doesn't like it. I believe, because I believe that, I don't believe, see, and Ian kind of touched on this, but I'm like more on the extreme side. I don't believe that our responsibilities are equal.
Yeah.
So I don't believe that we have an equal responsibility to protect each other. I don't believe that. So I believe that as a man that there's a certain level of hardness that the world is going to throw at you. I don't need to create it. This is what I tell the boys all the time. I'm like, bro,
Right.
especially as a black man, I'm some of this is racial because life is very difficult outside.
Yeah.
And so you can't be, there's a certain level of thickness. Somebody already talked about it. There's a certain level of a thickness of skin
Yeah.
that you have to survive in the corporate world. You have to be able to hear things about yourself and shrug it off and keep going. And if my kids are completely deconstructed the minute somebody says something crazy about them,
Yeah.
what the hell is going to happen when they go out into the real world and they get a promotion and somebody calls them a nigger or whatever other crazy slur?
Yep.
But they don't have any thick skin. They don't have anything because I just baby them the whole time. Well, okay, sure, go to HR, get the guy fired. But that's not how it works in the real world.
Right.
So, I mean, or some crazy cop comes up to him and he doesn't know how to keep his cool
Yeah.
because he's not in command
yeah.
of his emotions. Like, for y'all, it might be a little different, but for me, that's some life and death shit. If he doesn't know how to if he can't figure out how to suck it up and restrain his emotions.
Right.
There's some of you, if a cop messed with you unjustly, you could go off and get all histrionic and get out of the situation alive. That's not my reality.
Right.
So there are certain things, there's a certain level of hardness that my sons have to have, and a certain level of being able to know when to channel their emotions and which emotions to express and which not to.
Yep.
Because it could be the difference between them living and dying. The other side of that is, let's say you're in a situation at home where you're in financial ruin. Let's say you just got a call, you got laid off from work, and your kid comes up to you and says, "Hey, Dad, how's it going?" You better tell that kid you're okay. You better tell him, what? Oh, well, we're fucked, kid. Fuck, man, what are you, 12? You need to go out and get a job because you're supposed to melt down in front of your kid?
Right.
That's insane.
No.
I got situations at work. My girl's 6 months pregnant. I'm going to sit here and tell her, stress her out? No. Like, eventually I talk to you about work, but I'm not going to. So I just feel like there's certain roles that you have to have where, but they need to be channeled is what I'm saying. Like, you have that bad run-in with the cop, come home and cry for sure. But in that moment, you gotta suck it up and not and handle that the way I teach you to handle it. I was in a situation a couple of weeks ago where it was just me, my little lonesome with 5 lawyers, 5 very high-powered lawyers for the state. I was, whatever.
Yep.
And it was just me. And I'm not gonna make any comments about my representation, but it was just me. And I had to project a certain type of, You know, of course. So so I don't think anybody agrees with me at this point. I haven't looked at the comments yet, but you know, I think there are some roles that a man has to play, and situationally, he needs to exhibit the willingness to inflict violence. Notice I said exhibit. He needs to exhibit that. He needs, sometimes he needs to be able to not display his emotions, but know when is the right time.
Yep.
So I never teach my kids, men don't cry. I don't say that shit. Because David cried a lot, and so did Jesus. It says he was a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief.
Yep.
And so there should be times when it's interesting with David. David cries, and people are like, oh my God, he must be gay. Jesus cries, and they say, see how much he loved him. You know, talking about Lazarus. Right after it says Jesus wept, the people said, see how much he loved him. And so that is my paradigm for masculinity. Because you can't tell me as a Christian that you can get more masculine than David or Jesus.
Right.
Okay, well, both of them cried and both of them expressed lavish love on their male friends.
Yeah.
So I'm going to do that. I'm going to strive to be that type of person and strive to be that type of person for my son. But they also exhibited risk-taking, goal setting,
Putting
bravery,
themselves in between.
Putting themselves in between. The you know, David's wives got kidnapped one time, and he went off and
Took care of business.
He took care of business.
Yeah.
So, you know, so I don't agree with any of it, but
Jesus put himself in between the soldiers and his disciples.
Right. So I don't necessarily, Nathan of the village, you're on. So for me, it's like there's obviously a form of masculinity that is bad and that is toxic. It's obvious.
Yeah.
And it needs to be called out every single time because we have inherited a version of masculinity that I believe is absolutely destructive. And the benefit of calling out toxic masculinity, the benefit of adding an adjective to it is to say that means there's a form of masculinity that's good. I've never heard Ray, Tina, Kellendross, who's a BM fan, I've never heard any one of them say all masculinity is bad.
Right.
They've never said that. They've just said there's a type of masculinity that's bad.
And I don't think the commercial was saying that either.
No, well, it wasn't women that were stopping all the shit from happening. It was other men.
Right.
Which is what Kellendross was saying is, why is everybody so triggered? Now, if it was a bunch of women stopping it, that's bad messaging.
I see what you're saying, yeah.
But if it's men stopping it, then it's men saying, hey, there are two masculinities here. Choose one.
Yeah.
So why that's the thing that gets me. It's like, as Kellendross was saying, it's like, did any of you watch the commercial? Why is everybody so triggered by this? He wasn't saying masculinity is bad. He was saying that if you're the type of scumbag motherfucker that goes off and stalks women because she's got a tight jeans and you're following her from 44th Street to fucking 35th Street, which is what happened to my sister in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
You're lucky people don't go there and fuck you up. All right, that's toxic. I shouldn't do that. I'm angry. It just happened to my sister. I shouldn't have said that. God forgive me. All right, Nathaniel, what's up, man?
Hello, Ben.
What's up, man? Talk to me.
Okay, so here's my problem with the advertisement.
Hold on for a second. Did you see the entire advertisement? That's one question.
Yes, I did see the whole thing.
Okay. All right, go ahead.
My problem with it is that it's obvious propaganda. And it's not moderate liberal propaganda. It's obviously leftist propaganda. And here's why that would be. See, most people think these snowflakes that just do gender studies and all the bullshit, and then they're just delicate snowflakes, never make it in the real world. No. They're at the universities, and they also study real courses, too. There's a bunch of snowflakes in the frickin' coding world in Linux right now, and they've been an absolute terror because they keep trying to enforce their diversity bullshit, and then people are threatening to pull their code and could cripple the internet over it. But these people, these snowflakes get into positions of power, and they can dox the hell out of you. So it's like I'd say it's probably Gillette just reflexively going like, don't hurt me.
Okay, when you said it's propaganda, is it possible that whoever drafted the commercial and whatever board approved the commercial agreed that this is a real issue and that they wanted to play a role in helping move us forward in the conversation? Is that possible?
Yes, but it just seems more likely that they just gave in to the leftist bullshit and reflexively because they're afraid of getting doxxed.
Wait, that Gillette is afraid of getting doxxed?
They could harm a big, powerful company. Imagine if they got some SJWs into the ranks of their employees.
Yeah, but do you think Gillette was on any radar? Do you think Gillette was on some SJW radar? Like people were going after Gillette prior to
Maybe
this
they're
commercial?
hoping that the ad can keep them off their radar out of like a fear reaction, is what I'm thinking.
Okay. What was wrong about the specific situations in the video?
Well, they made it seem like that modern masculinity is just sort of not thought about. It's just sort of taught and droned in almost robotically. Like it's nothing that they ever really question. You know? It's like it's just pure social programming. No conscious thought goes into it. It's all harmful, all bad. That's how it struck me.
Well, who was doing the correcting in the video?
Yes, it was men doing the correcting, but if you think that there aren't men within the leftist movement, then you're just kidding yourself.
No, what I mean is, isn't the messaging in the video about choosing which masculinity you're going to identify with?
Sure. It did kind of seem that way, for sure.
Okay, so do you think that that's a bad message?
Well, telling someone that they have a choice is never a bad message. It's just a matter of what choices you're presenting that makes it bad.
Okay, so do you think that the choices that were presented in the commercial was bad messaging?
Possibly. Let me tell you what I think masculinity should be like, okay?
Well, hold on.
As long as you're...
Hold on. I definitely want to hear your understanding of masculinity. I agree. But tell me what was harmful about the messaging in that commercial.
Well, it did seem like a bit in the direction of like pro-male repression, just behave and not hurt anybody. Sort of repressive type stuff. Just bottle it up.
Okay,
and act the way it...
What element of that commercial was it when the dad stopped walking his son so that he could protect the other kid from being bullied by the gang of kids? Was that repression?
I was speaking more to the yard tussle. To suppress your masculine desire to play fight and so forth.
Well, did those two kids look like they were play fighting?
You should have seen some of the shit my brother and his friends years ago used to do. It looked quite a bit like that, but they were all good buddies after.
Well, yeah. I mean, I understand that. I mean, we probably grew up the same way, but did it look like... So, the two kids being broken up at the barbecue, that was the massive leftist propaganda?
That and all the men lined up on the barbecues just robotically churning out the same phrase as part of their suggestion that it's just not thought about.
Aren't men the heroes in that commercial?
Yes, but that could be a softer approach to the propaganda, saying you have the power, you know?
So the leftists wanted to repress men by telling them that they have the power.
To sort of to repress natural male drives and desires they see as toxic. Well, by giving them you can choose not to be that way.
What about the 5 kids running after the other kid? Is that toxic behavior or no?
That's toxic for sure. You don't chase people around like that.
What about the guy? What about the guy going after the lady? Was that toxic or no?
Going after the lady.
Did you see that part in the commercial where the dude was going after the girl walking across the street?
That one sounds familiar. I think that one was like brief enough in the commercial. I might have briefly forgot about it because it comes along very quickly. The other segments are a little longer.
Okay, I'm failing to see. I'm failing to see where the exact male repression and propaganda comes in for for that commercial, because it seems that you agree that a lot of those actions are bad.
Well, the thing is, when you tell someone your agenda, when you essentially tell them a lie, the best way to sell a lie is to wrap it up in the truth so it looks like the truth. You throw in some genuinely toxic behaviors in with the actually not toxic behaviors that are just male, and then just wrap it up together, and that's how you do that.
Okay. All right. So what if you had a chance to do a commercial, do you believe that there's a certain type of masculinity that's presented that is not good for men or women?
Sure.
Okay. So
in fact, really quick, let me tell you where modern masculinity comes from.
Okay.
In the Middle Ages, it was actually a form of homoeroticism. Cut your hair short, get all buff, and go oil up and go wrestling with the boys and so forth.
Okay.
It was a plot by their wives and by the church to get men to behave.
Okay. So I'm failing to see the point. What do you mean by that?
Well, it was just a quick aside about the origins of modern masculinity. Why I think it's kind of silly.
Okay. So what do you think masculinity should be?
Well, okay, here we go. As long as you mind your morals, the law, and respect others, just do what comes naturally. Just do what comes naturally, as long as you behave well.
Well, what if my morals are that women are beneath me, and if I want to smack them on the butt when they walk across the street, I can?
Well, you're not respecting others, are you? I said they also mind respecting others. That's not respecting others.
Okay. I see. Okay, so respect others. Okay. So I think you and I agree on that. Okay. So we agree there. Isn't the commercial telling people wasn't the commercial challenging men to respect other people, to do what you were saying we should do?
I suppose that was true, yes.
Okay, so if the commercial is doing what you just defined as being a good man, and you can see that there is a form of masculinity that's bad, I would assume that you would have enjoyed the commercial.
Well, maybe my first impression of it was a bit overly negative, but it did seem a bit propagandistic. Well, it has that flavor to it.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's why I rolled my eyes. It was definitely propaganda, but not all propaganda is bad, right? I mean, we're all trying to...
I suppose that's true. Not all publicity is bad. In fact, some people think that all publicity is good, but anyway.
Okay, so what I'm hearing from you is I'm not really seeing much disagreement between you and I on this commercial, though.
Yeah.
You don't like a bunch of boys chasing down another boy. You're glad that the dad stopped and stopped that from happening. And
right.
You're glad for that. You're glad. I'm assuming that the woman's being harassed and the guy stops and says, "Hey man, that's not cool. We don't do that." You're glad for that. You're a little bit put off about the kids wrestling on the in the backyard.
Let them wrestle. Boys wrestle.
Okay. But other than that,
go on and work out their issues.
But other than that, you felt like it was a good commercial.
Yeah, it had some positive points.
Well, it seems to me that you're saying it had more positive than negative points. You said that.
Well, there was that bit about the men behind the grills all repeating the same line over and over.
What line were they saying?
Boys will be boys.
Yeah, they were just robotically chattering it out.
What do you think that was intended to be a metaphor of?
I think they were just trying to suggest that it's something that's never really thought about, is just taught to you, and you just kind of regurgitate from the mouth, so to speak. It's just something you repeat because you heard your parents say it.
Right. I mean, do you think that that's true? Do you think there's any truth to that? That we parrot phrases?
There's a lot of things that people just sort of regurgitate from the mouth and repeat. A lot of the time, I hate to admit it, but that whole NPC meme, we're all NPCs to an extent.
Hold on for a second.
I'm a solipsist.
Mike Sparks, I would really love it if you would call in, because I'm genuinely confused about how you could possibly say that. So Mike Sparks, if you would call in, please, that would be great. Okay, you're a solipsist. Go ahead.
So solipsism promotes the idea that everything we end up doing or saying, we were going to do it eventually until something about our character changed. We were all just programmed by our upbringing and by our environment. That we're all predisposed to a certain type of behavior until something about us changes. The
Okay.
programming changes.
Okay, so wouldn't that fall into wouldn't you be more in agreement then with that part of the commercial, because doesn't that illustrate that?
But yes, but I almost feel like that maybe that was put there as to be some sort of a weapon to be used against what they see as toxic masculinity, is what I mean. They're not being honest about it. They're just using it as a weapon.
Well, if they view toxic masculinity as something negative, wouldn't you want to use weapons against it?
You don't change attitudes with weapons. You change attitudes with good ideas.
Well, we're using the term weapon metaphorically, right?
Yeah.
So if you've got a bunch of men droning off about boys will be boys, I mean, wouldn't that make a man question when he's used that phrase?
I suppose it could.
So isn't that a good thing? Isn't that a good, sort of technique?
Certainly, I think the main difference between us, though, is that I have a more suspicious nature. Trust is never a given with me. I'm a little more suspicious of it.
Okay, I understand being suspicious, but I think if you take the imagery and I'll tell you what, the most emotional part for me was when that guy broke up the kid's going to jump that kid, and then you saw his son looking at him, because that's, being a father myself, and being able to model certain times when, I was blessed enough to demonstrate what I would say is God's heart for people, or good masculinity to my son, and feeling the weight of that responsibility that you're influencing another man. I thought that was a very, very important moment, and I thought that Gillette was taking a risk and they were actually trying to say something instead of just shove products down our throat. If you think this through with me, Nathan. What is a demographic of men that would be using Gillette products?
Men with facial hair, obviously.
Okay, so men with facial hair, men with beards, and then when they use a phrase, "the best a man can get," as their slogan, what type of men do you think they're appealing to? You think they're appealing to liberal men or leftist men by that type of comment?
Well, actually, that phrase goes back a little older, believe it or not. That slogan is older than you think, and it originally meant best that men can get, as in the best razor men can get. It's the best that men can get.
Sure.
It's now shifted into what you're saying.
Right. So culturally speaking, they were not appealing to their general audience, were they? So they actually took a risk.
No. They did take a risk.
Okay.
To an extent.
All right. So they took a risk because they were trying to say something.
I still feel like it's a possibility that they were reflexively worried about snowflakes and they wanted to be on the safe side.
Well, they probably were worried about snowflakes, and the snowflakes came down en masse because I'm looking at all these very, very sensitive men, apparently. Very sensitive masculine men with beards who were upset about this commercial.
So what you're saying is people who aren't leftists subjected to it are also snowflakes.
Well, I'm saying the people who are running around calling everybody snowflakes and making fun of people for needing safe spaces just demonstrated that the only reason that they don't need safe spaces is because they're generally dominating the conversation. And it seems to me that when the conversation went in a way that was finally critical of their perspective, they got snowflakely with the best of them.
Yes. Yeah.
That's just what it looks like to me. If you can
The
be...
difference there is right-wing snowflakes don't dox and attack people.
Well, that's because they haven't been attacked as much as they've attacked other people. But it seems to me that they have been attacking Gillette. I mean, I'm reading these comments, and they're pretty nasty. You POS misandrist, toxic masculinity, up yours.
Oh yeah.
I was watching this thing about
Pretty light stuff compared to what I've heard.
Well,
you don't even want to hear some of the shit I've ran into.
I mean,
You don't even want to.
I hear you, but I mean, it just seems to me that, you know, I don't know. All right, man. Thank you very much, Nathaniel. I appreciate it.
Right.
Okay.
Bye.
I wanted for Mike, I forgot his last name to call in, but he
Sparky
didn't.
or something like that.
He didn't call in, and I want to explain this again. It was Mike Sparks. Yeah. I'll read what Peter said. Blaming bad behavior on gender is wrong. Excusing bad behavior on gender is wrong. Bad behavior is bad behavior. Evil doesn't have gender. The phrase toxic masculinity is not blaming the toxicity on masculinity.
Right.
It is saying that there are societal expectations of what it means to be a man. There is a narrative that people are hearing. This is what it means to be a man.
Yeah.
And there are people that are saying that version of manhood is bad. This version of manhood is good. The phrase toxic masculinity is not used to demonize masculinity. It is used to demonize a version of masculinity that they feel, and I agree, about 84% of which is harmful. Mm-hmm. Which is why in the commercial, men are checking other men, and men are the heroes in the commercial. Men are the ones that are correcting. The positive men, the positive folks who are positively masculine, are men. There were. I'm going to say this. There weren't even any LGBT guys there. Mm-hmm. It was cisnormative, and it was heteronormative, which is, you know, because Gillette understands that their constituency is mostly cis hetero men. Mm-hmm. So men were the heroes. They were the shining stars in the commercial.
Yep.
So it is not right to say that commercial is demonizing men, or even that the phrase toxic masculinity is demonizing men. There is a version of masculinity that many of us were taught that is wrong. And there's a version of masculinity that is right. And of course, as a Christian, I speak in very black and white terms because I think there's a clear paradigm in the Bible. Mm-hmm. And there are examples. There is a phrase in the Old Testament called B'nai Belial, or sons of Belial, that is translated as worthless men. You know, it says the sons of Eli were worthless men. Mm-hmm. There's a category. And you know what happens with those people generally? They always sexually take advantage of vulnerable women, sons of Eli. Mm-hmm. They lie and bear false witness, and they kill other people who are weak. Mm-hmm. So there is even a term, so some of you might be Christians, there is even a term for toxic masculinity in the Old Testament.
Right.
It's called worthless men.
Right.
So I wanted to talk to Mike because I'm trying to figure out.
What did he say that you wanted him to call up?
He said you're blaming men for you're blaming masculinity or something. I want to know if I'm not communicating well. But the easiest way I can say it is that there are two versions of masculinity. One of them is toxic. One of them is heroic. Mm-hmm. I don't think there's anybody that would disagree with that who believes that toxic masculinity is a thing.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anybody that would disagree with that. I'm pretty sure if Jen was here, she would agree. Mm-hmm. She loves, what's the guy named Rollins, Henry Rollins? She loves that dude. He's a man. Well, she's an ultra feminist. Mm-hmm. You, like me sometimes, you're a feminist and you have problems with men. So I want to know if I'm communicating well here or not. Is the hazing that recruits receive in boot camp toxic? the profession that those men are engaging in is you're talking about killing other human beings. And so that is a whole different set of paradigm for me. Mm-hmm. That is I think as long as people understand that this is not the normal world, mm-hmm. that when you're in, especially pre-deployment hazing is when it's hot, mm-hmm. it gets ratcheted up. They got all these stress cards that you can pull out in the Marine Corps now. I think that that's a mistake. Mm-hmm. You're sending people off to kill and die, and I don't know which is worse. And you're sending people off to watch their friends get, evaporated in front of them. And so the things that you need to do psychologically to dig out the type of aggression or the fortitude that is necessary, a person on the outside is going to call that hazing, but a lot of that has to do with a lot of guys making it home alive. Mm-hmm. That's a fact. Mm-hmm. And I'm not really going to get into the psychology about it or anecdotal, but that's a fact. A lot of the hazing has saved a ton of people's lives. And unless you're in that situation, you have no idea.
Yeah.
And that's as much as I'll say about that. I think you're missing the point. Toxic masculinity, the phrase is sexist. If women did the same shit, it wouldn't be toxic femininity. Well, Ben, again, I don't think it's a sexist phrase. I think it's a way to make a distinction.
What is the last little bit that he said? The masculinity part targets men. That's exactly who's doing the things that we're talking about.
Well, I'm saying
of all the times,
I'm saying there are different versions of being masculine. That's what I'm saying. Literally, I need somebody to call. If you still think that I'm being sexist or the concept is sexist, please call me and I will shut up and listen to you. Because I'm really, really, really trying to figure it out. Because I still don't get it. Vin, how do you reconcile your passion about racial mistreatment in the CJ system?
Of all the times that I feel like I've been made uncomfortable in public by people saying things or putting their hand on me or whatever, that I didn't want them touching me, it was never a woman. It was always men.
Right. Yeah, I just think that a lot of people... Yeah, Ben, call in. Golly, that would be the simplest thing. Call in and then we'll have a discussion. But
I can't call in right now.
all I said was that there's versions. That's all. Okay, all right, De Herrera, call, because Ben can't call me in. Oh, well, you should have told me, Ben. I'd have kept your phone on for you. Calling masculine behavior masculine instead of just behavior is sexist, according to Ben.
Do your signature breakdown of the word masculine. That's what they said.
De Herrera.
Man. Oh, man.
All right, let me ask you some questions, and then, because you and Sori talked the first time.
Okay.
Is there a bad way to be a man?
Is there a bad way to be a man? You'd have to give me more than that. Why can't I hear you? Hold on. I got no sound.
Can you hear us now?
Yes.
Okay. Let me say it this way. If I say to my son, this is what it means to be a man. You never cry. You never show other men affection. Otherwise, you're a sissy. You never listen to women. Anytime you see a marginally good-looking woman, you make sure you let her know about it. And if she's close by, smack her on the ass. And you better be the sole and primary breadwinner, otherwise you're not a man, and I don't even show your face around my house. Now, if I put that package together and said this is what masculinity is, would that be good or bad?
The picture you portrayed would be bad. What the hell? I lost sound again.
Okay, so that would be a bad portrayal of masculinity.
That would be bad behavior in general. You just taught him to assault a person based on his desires.
But Steve,
I mean, you predicated it on women, but I mean, you could equate that across anything.
Steve,
you know, go slap that boy and steal his ball. Go, you know,
Steve,
rob that store because you want his stuff.
Steve, but hold on. I didn't say this is what it means to be a person. I said this was what it means to be a man. So did I give him is that a good way of being a man?
It's a terrible way of being a person. But you're equating the behavior of being a man to being a person.
Yes, because I'm pretty sure that you believe in the gender binary, don't you? You believe there's only men and women?
Yes, but I think people are good and bad.
Sure.
Regardless of gender.
Sure. And do you believe that men have certain roles in society?
Sure.
Okay. Do you have boys?
Do I have boys? Yes.
Do you feel the responsibility to grow them up to be men?
I feel I feel the responsibility to teach them to be responsible. And,
sure, but you've never
you've
never told your boys, hey, you're going to be a man one day.
Not in so many words, but yeah.
You've never said, hey, you're going to be a man and here are going to be your responsibilities as a man.
I've said similar. I mean, I know what you're saying. Yeah.
Okay. So you're not.
I didn't use those exact words, but.
Okay, so you're not just telling your kids to be good people. You're also teaching them to be good men, because you believe that there are roles that men should occupy in society.
Sure.
Okay. So with that premise, if I go and say this is what it means to be a man in society, and I list off all those terrible actions, is that a good version of being a man or a bad version of being a man?
You're basically telling them that a good man is a bad person.
Right. So would that be a good version of being a man or a bad version of being a man?
That would be a bad version of anything, woman or man.
I agree with you, but I'm specifically teaching. Hold on, wait. I'm specifically teaching my son to be a man, and I'm defining for my son what it means to be a man. Right? We agreed that men have roles in society, right?
Sure.
Okay. So if I said this is what it means to be a man, would I be creating a good man or a bad man?
You would be creating a bad man, but not specific or not solely a bad man. I get what you're saying.
Sure, he's
and what I'm saying is you're narrowing the idea down to one specific thing when that concept applies to a much broader spectrum.
Well, hold on.
But by you saying just man, you're saying that you're telling him that a bad person is a good man. So you're teaching him what a bad person is, but you're teaching him in a way that he thinks is good.
No, brother. Like, you told me I'm not raising a blank slate. I'm raising a boy. So if I'm raising a boy, I'm raising a man. Are there good men and bad men in the world?
There's good, bad, everything in the world.
Yep, but I'm asking you about men. Are there good men or bad men in the world?
You're trying to narrow my logic down to one specific thing. What I'm saying is yes, there are good, bad men. There's also good and bad everything.
Sure, but the specific question I'm asking you right now is, are there good men and bad men in the world?
And I said, yes, there are good men and there are bad men.
Okay. So
just like there's a good, bad dog.
Okay, I agree. Now, let's talk about men for a second. Are there traits that are common to bad men?
Specifically, traits manifest from bad men in a specific way, but the trait is human.
Look, you're talking to a person that believes in universal human sinfulness. So to say that men have problems doesn't mean that it's located only in men. The problem is right now the subject is how do we raise our boys to be men? Because we're not just raising persons, we're raising men.
Right, but
listen
you can make the argument.
Steve, listen,
go ahead.
Listen to my logic. Isn't it true that your boys are generally going to be stronger than whatever mate they select?
Yes.
Okay. So you
Maybe
can't
not one, but
you can't teach, let's say you have a little girl, right? You cannot teach your son to manage his strength the same way that you would teach your daughter to manage her strength, because he is, generally speaking, going to be stronger than his mate. Isn't that true?
Yes.
And she, generally speaking, is going to be weaker than her mate. Isn't that true, physically?
Yes.
So then you have to teach...
Assuming heterosexual relationships, yes.
Sure. So then you have to teach him how to manage his strength in a proper way that you wouldn't have to teach her, right?
Right.
Okay. So if I go to your boy and I say, look, a man, the way you need to manage your strength is if that bitch talks back, smack her in the mouth. Is that good or bad?
That is societally bad.
No.
I would say morally bad.
Okay, good. We agree. Okay. So you just said that he's going to be stronger than his mate because he's a man. Isn't that true?
Yes.
Okay. So then I came to him and I told him the way that you manage your male strength is to use it to intimidate someone else, to intimidate your female partner. Is that a good version of masculinity or a bad version of masculinity?
Man, I'm having a hard time with you, Vin, because you're getting really specific and nuanced, and I think you can apply the same logic to different things.
No, you can't. No, you can't, because you just told me that generally speaking, your daughter is going to be weaker than her male partner.
Let me try to equate it in a way that I think would be across both spectrums, right? So I'm teaching them as boys to manage their strength, against their partner or somebody weaker, correct? In this scenario, in your scenario, a female. But I also teach them not to abuse their strength or power or advantage over their younger siblings who are smaller and weaker than them. But they're boys.
Good. But my point is, I think it's disingenuous for people with our perspective to say there is a clear difference between men and women. Women should not be fighting men in the UFC. We make this giant deal about saying there are differences between men and women. But then we say, hey, bad people are just bad people in general. There's no gender attached to it. When you and I both know that there's certain types of crimes that are absolutely directly connected to gender.
Right, and I mean, with the 90 billion comments flying through, I'm positive you didn't see it, but I mentioned this, is that the bad behavior is there, but the manifestation is based on the person and the person's experience and who they are, and gender plays a role in that.
Sure.
So the bad behavior is the root, not the gender, not the cause.
Okay, that's the problem, right? Stop. Right there, right there. Steve, stop right there. Steve, stop. Nobody is saying that gender is the root of the problem. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying gender is the problem. And neither was the commercial. What I'm saying is there is a way to be a man that's bad and harmful to society, and a way to be a man that is good. That there are a selection of behaviors and attitudes that are bad for society about being a man, and there are a selection of behaviors and attitudes that are good for society about being a man.
Sure. Did you play sports, Vin?
Absolutely.
Did you go to a locker room?
Yep.
Did you ever experience locker room talk?
Sure.
So would you say that the people who engaged in locker room talk were set aside by their father and said the only way to be a good man is to demean women around other men?
The example that they got. So like in the commercial, you saw that dad breaking up that thing where the kids were about to jump the other kid, and then you saw the son looking. The dad didn't have to say anything, but the son got, okay, when I see somebody in trouble like that, that's what I need to do when I get strong like that. So if a kid is watching from, 5, 6 years old, their dad objectifying women, he's got a porn stash in the garage, he's you can see him staring at the 18-year-old girl that's crossing the train tracks. The dad doesn't need to sit him down and tell him that shit. He's already taught him that. So yes, we all took part in it, and none of us knew that that's not what you were supposed to do. Until another man took me aside and said, bruh, Do you realize what you're doing? Do you know what a woman is? And then he opened the Bible and I said, shit. This is not cool what I'm doing. So my point is, if you agree that we have specific roles in society and you agree that there's a bad way to be a man, what's the problem? It's not saying that men are bad. It's saying that there is a bad way to be a man.
But that's not what I don't think that's what they're saying. And
that's
I think
what they're saying. Yes, it is.
They are grouping this concept of masculinity into this toxic idea. And so they're not saying, like, if you're a bad person, you should be stopped by a... That's not what they're saying.
Who are the heroes in the Gillette commercial, Steve?
What's that?
Who are the heroes in the Gillette commercial?
Well, it was the only women in the commercial were victims, so...
Who are the heroes?
Men.
So how could you say that they're communicating that the male gender is bad when they made the heroes men?
Right, but the heroes were just the guys who regulated the other guys. What I'm saying is...
Right.
Let me ask you a question. That, like, we're teaching men that their behavior is okay, and that's what I'm saying is, like, that's the behavior exists on both sides of the aisle. It's just we're focused on men because men are very physical about it. But I mean, again in the comments, I made the parallel with Jason Momoa and Chris Hemsworth.
Women are not breaking.
You got like Ellen on her show, making comments.
How many female active shooters were there last year?
How many what?
Female active shooters.
I don't know. Your point is, I'm sure, minimal to none.
So what do you mean women are doing the same things? They're not doing the same things, bro. They're not breaking into houses.
Back to my point that the behavior exists, but the manifestation is different.
But
we're not addressing the behavior. We're addressing the manifestation.
No, no. This is what I think everybody's misunderstanding here. They're addressing the paradigms that lead to the behavior. There's a paradigm of masculinity that then gets manifested in the real world that is dangerous.
Thank you, Zoe.
That's what they're saying. Say again?
It's also needed. It's
no.
manifestation that is dangerous.
No, we don't need a paradigm where boys are taught to objectify women. We don't ever need that.
Right, the objectification of women is the manifestation. It's not the problem. It's not the cause. It's not the behavior.
Right, the cause
the manifestation of that behavior. Because the manifestation on the opposite side of the aisle is Ellen sitting on a show talking about Chris Hemsworth and Jason Momoa with the freaking clothes half off, running around half naked, and how whatever they would do to them. Like, it's the same thing.
Sure, women are okay.
That's not a foot off.
No, women are lustful as hell. Believe me, I know. The problem is...
Right, but they don't act on it in a physical way, so the manifestation is different.
Well,
so your example of walking by and slapping a girl in the ass, telling her how great she looks, right?
Well, they can't.
That's physical assault. That's the equivalent of walking up to somebody, knocking them in the head, and taking their wallet.
Steve,
you're taking something from somebody using physical actions. That's assault.
Steve,
but the manifestation is masculine.
Steve, nobody is against masculinity. That's why they made men the heroes. In the commercial. What we're against is a set of ideas about what it means to be a man. That's the problem. It's not being a man. It's there are different interpretations of what a real man is. Like, let me give you an example. Are you a hip hop fan?
I was as a kid.
So Tupac, you were around Tupac.
Yeah.
Tupac presented a form of masculinity, didn't he? Thug life.
Sure.
That's a form of masculinity. Now, all of us, now I'm saying us, I'm saying in my hood, we didn't have our dads. So we're looking at Tupac. We go, oh, that's what it means to be a man. You carry a gun, somebody steps on your shoe, you get at him, you wear a bandana, you're a thug. That's what it means to be a man. Now, was that a good paradigm for being a man? No, he died at 25, Steve. So all I'm saying.
I can't make the instance argument. I mean, I can try, but it'll fall on its face. Like, sure, it wasn't necessarily the greatest idea of masculinity, but did it also teach people to posture? Did it teach them to stand up for themselves? Did it teach them to engage and essentially protect themselves? Because we already said that, you know, men prey upon other men just as much as they prey upon other women. Well, I've said that. Maybe we didn't say that.
Steve. What I'm saying is, as a black man, Tupac was an example of toxic black masculinity. The black man without a father who then joins the gang, calls himself a thug, and then engages in violence and gets killed before he's 30. There's a set of ideas in the hood, in the ghetto, of what it means to be a man that is completely and totally wrong.
Right. I've experienced it.
Okay, so you know it when you see it. When you see the dude, he's with this girl, he's got 4 or 5 baby mamas. You know what it means. You got 4 or 5 baby mamas, and you're thugged out, and you're gonna go shoot the guy because you're not gonna let nobody talk shit to you. Blah 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 blah. That whole constellation of ideas. Don't you think that there's a lot of young black men that look at that and define that as what it means to be a man?
Okay, well, let me.
It's a yes or no question. Can you answer that? Are there a lot of black men that have that set of ideas that's what it means to be a man?
Well, I would answer in the form of a question, and I don't mean to be offensive. I know you don't get offended, but maybe somebody in the comments might, should they hear it. Would that be a way to be black?
Say again?
I said, would
yeah, I would call, Steve, I would call that toxic black masculinity, absolutely.
Would you call it toxic blackness, though? Would you say it's just toxic blackness?
No, because Tupac rooted that in being a man. He said it over and over again in his songs. I can't let nobody touch me because you can't take a man's pride. People take kindness for weakness, that's why I'm never kind. So he rooted that in being a man. He said, this is what it means to be a man. Somebody talks to you, you got to put the screws to them because you can't let anybody test your manhood.
Right.
Okay, so is that good or bad?
I think it's a good survival tool.
All right.
I think in the right situation, it teaches you, because if you don't do that, somebody, comes at you in whatever way.
Where's Tupac?
Right? I mean,
Where's Tupac
I've
now?
had guns pulled on me, or I've been jumped in the park. I've had, confrontation in my life, and if you show weakness, if you roll over and show your belly, they attack more.
Where's Tupac now?
More.
Where's all his friends?
Tupac's dead.
Where's Tupac and all his friends from '97? Where are they? They're dead and in
Depends
jail.
on the top two, but Tupac's dead.
Tupac's dead. Fatal's dead. They're all dead. Suge is in jail. His version of masculinity was not positive. Would you agree that Tupac's version of masculinity was different from Martin Luther King's version of masculinity? Would you agree with that?
I don't know. That might be deeper than you intended it to be. But Martin Luther King didn't necessarily turn the other cheek either. He didn't act out in violence.
Did Martin Luther King Did Martin Luther King threaten to kill anyone for messing with him?
No.
Did Martin Luther King ever
root? He didn't act in violence.
Did Martin Luther?
He didn't just take it lying down either.
Hold on. Did Martin Luther King ever root his masculinity in killing someone?
No.
Did Tupac?
He rooted talking about it. I don't know how many people he actually killed.
In his talking, he rooted his masculinity in killing anybody that messed with him, right? Isn't that true?
Sure.
Okay.
But
okay, so can we agree?
King was a real person. Tupac was an entertainer.
Can we agree? Can we agree that Martin Luther King presented one version of masculinity and Tupac presented another version of masculinity? Can we agree with that?
Yeah,
Huh?
you could also say Martin Luther King presented a positive way to be a Black American, and Tupac presented a negative way to be a Black American. You can make the same
I
argument for
agree.
different
I
dynamics.
agree. You're right. You're right. And who would I
Then
want
why are you narrowing it to this one dynamic then?
No, no.
This-
You know why it's relevant? Because I have black boys. So I need to narrow it down to that dynamic because that's the reality they're living with. And I need them to be more like Martin and not like Tupac. And I need them to say, look, boys, when you see this set of ideas, that's bad. That's a bad way to be a black man. And when you see this set of ideas, that's a good way to be a black man. Isn't that true?
Sure.
Okay, that's all they're saying.
But do you teach them to be good women? Like,
Yes,
I
I
mean,
do.
You teach your boys to be good women?
No, I teach my daughters to be good women.
Sure, because it relates to them and who they are, not because what they are is bad.
But
Not
that
because-
is not, Steve. Why do you keep going back there? They are not saying that the
is
male
the actual
gender.
argument.
They're
Your
not
argument
saying that
is
the male
different
gender is bad.
masculinities. There's a good way. Your argument, Vin, is that there's two masculinities: a good masculinity and a bad masculinity. And I'm saying take masculinity out of that. There's good and bad behavior.
No, I'm not going to do that because there are certain types of actions that are almost exclusively male. And you know that.
Murder is not exclusively male.
I said almost exclusively male.
Sure.
Somebody
but
breaks into your house, it's
this
a 90% chance a dude is doing that, Steve. You hear a rape, if you hear a rape right now, you know who you're thinking committed the rape, right? You hear
Sure,
active
because
shooter,
strong prey on the weak,
you hear active,
right? But if you
yes.
if you hear about corporate crime, but nobody ever talks about those because nobody actually cares, even though those affect probably vast majority more people than even a mass shooting would. But you hear about corporate crime, who do you assume?
I mean, a white male. That's what I assume.
What? Sure, most people would.
You know why?
But they're not the only ones with access to that.
Nobody's
They're not the
saying,
only ones who do it.
Steve,
Martha Stewart went to jail for insider trading.
Steve, do you really
Martha
believe...
Stewart, a white woman who cooked on TV.
Steve, do you really believe that when these people are talking about toxic masculinity, that they mean that only men commit crimes? Is that what you think they're saying?
No, what I think they're saying is the state of being male is toxic and as such causes X amount of problems. And if we just rooted out the male aspect, then they wouldn't be toxic anymore.
So, Steve, why is the male in the commercial the hero? If that's your argument.
Because if I'm going to appeal to the black community, do I get an old white guy to stand up and try to make a point, or do I get a young black guy who they want to look up to make a point?
Is there anything is there anything you can point to, either in literature or whatever, that makes the case that you just made? That that they're only going after maleness inherently, ontologically. Where are you getting that from?
Where am I getting? I'm getting it from just it's a relatively new idea. So no, I don't have any literature or documents or factual evidence to say this is what it's coming from. But aside from it, I mean, this is going to get a little more political. How pattern behavior on the left.
I'm going to read to you what the American Psychological Association says about what masculinity ideology is. It includes anti-femininity, achievement, eschewal of the appearance of weakness, and adventure, risk, and violence. They didn't say it's about being male. It's saying... Now, some of this I disagree with. Like, for example, I think adventure and risk are things we should promote in boys. But they're not... Even this one, which I disagree with, some of it, it's not saying that being inherently male is a problem. Steve, don't you think if being inherently male was a problem that they would just have to drop the term toxic? Wouldn't they just say masculinity?
No.
So if I say...
Because how would you rally people against themselves if you grouped everybody. Because right now, me and you are we're not on opposite sides of ideology. We're on opposite sides of terms and definitions. But we wouldn't, if we were both united in the idea that, like, no, fuck that. There's nothing, it's not being male isn't the problem, right? If we were both united in that idea, then how would you get the point across? How would you demonize the few? How would you
Steve, if I said,
ostracize?
Well, there are a lot of men who are demons, Steve.
There's a lot of people who are demons, Vin.
Yeah,
like,
but
it's not specific.
Steve,
but you want to keep running back to, like, men are terrible in societal.
No, I did not say that. I never said men are terrible. I said there are versions of men that are terrible.
But they're only terrible by standards of society.
No, they're
right?
terrible by
Society
God's law. What are you talking about? No, Steve. If I say, Steve, if you say to me, Vin, don't drink that Pepsi, it's a poison Pepsi. Are you saying that every Pepsi is poison?
Well, I don't know. Do I have, carnal knowledge of what's in the Pepsi? Am I don't know. Maybe I missed your point. Like,
You
are
do.
saying, like,
No,
I know
hold on.
there's
So let's go
poison
with
in
the
Pepsi,
analogy.
Don't drink that one.
You said, don't drink that one, it's poison Pepsi.
Okay.
And then you say, here's another one. This one is good. Right? Are you saying all Pepsi is bad?
Is the poison part of the natural makeup of Pepsi?
No, it's poison. It's the fact that you say that it's poison.
There is something other than Pepsi in that is bad.
Right. I agree. And then you give me the real Pepsi that's good, right?
Right, and it's got all the same stuff the other Pepsi does, minus the stuff that isn't Pepsi.
Right. So
those are two different versions of Pepsi. That's not Pepsi Zero and Pepsi regular.
Well, wait a second, Steve.
Caffeine-free Pepsi. That's two identical things. One with an added thing in it.
Yes.
Which is bad.
Steve,
what I was
stop.
talking about, a bad behavior. It is a bad learned way to act.
Steve.
Not a bad state of being.
Steve, you just made my point for me. When these people say toxic masculinity, what they're saying is that's not the real masculinity. That's masculinity with poison added to it. And we need to identify that and give people the right alternative, which is what the commercial does. It's saying that all this evil that men are doing is not native to their nature. It's actually a lot more optimistic than Christianity is. Because I would say it's native to our nature because of sin. But you just made my point for me. You just said that no, the Pepsi itself is good. It's just the added toxicity to it. And that's why you had to identify it as poisonous so that I would not be deceived into drinking something that would kill me. So when these people say there's toxic masculinity, what they're saying is there is a poisonous way that has infiltrated our mindset about what a man is, and here's a real version of what a man should be. I think that's positive. They're not saying every man is bad. They're saying there's a bad way to be a man that is not actually the true way to be a man. How does anyone have a problem with that?
We don't disagree on the idea. We're disagreeing on the definition of what it is.
Okay, have you read any literature? Here, Steve, let me give you some homework. Honestly, bro, have you? Because I actually have. I've read college level literature about this stuff. Have you actually read any literature from these people?
From Gillette?
No, not from Gillette. From people that are using the phrase on a sociological level. Have you actually read any of their literature?
I haven't read anything from anybody of note. Let's put it that way.
I will send you. I will personally.
Rhetoric, which is what I'm attacking, is more the rhetoric.
Steve, I will send you, personally send you through email, an article. And if you'll read it, you and I offline can have this conversation again and tell me what your thoughts are. How's that?
All right.
Because we gotta listen. We gotta listen to each other.
A while ago.
Say again?
I said I will if you email me. You stopped emailing me a while ago.
All right. So I'm loading up my email right now. I'm gonna get the article. It's a college level article. It doesn't have any, hoo-ha in it. And then we'll talk later and see if that changes anything for us.
All right.
All right. Much love to you, brother.
All right, man.
All right. Zonia, you got to call me because you owe me a phone call. Vin is addicted to Pepsi. That is true. Caesar, I agree. Read the Bible. I agree. What type of shirt do you want, Mr. Official? Do you want a Middle America shirt? Do you want a Sori Secret shirt? What do you want? What's up? What's up? Who's talking to me? Is that Z? What's good, Z?
Yeah, it's me.
I'm a glutton for punishment. What's up?
Well, actually, I was trying to call to tell you because everybody in the chat has been saying that the conversation was the circular conversation and it wasn't going anywhere for the past 20 minutes.
Anyway, well, that's my guy. That's my friend. So it is what it is.
Yeah, it just sounded like people want to be right, and they don't necessarily want to understand.
I don't really think that that's what's going on. I really feel like there's a part of me feels like it was an unfortunate choice of words because of how emotional it is, I guess. But I really feel like people are getting from that verbiage, being a man is inherently toxic. And so I think that I think that, and like I said, I've never ran into a feminist or anybody that believes that thinks that. So I just think it's a communication issue. Maybe I'm not communicating very well, but
No, you were doing a perfectly good job of it, as far as I could tell. But I think that, well, I mean, there are a number of elements to it. I don't want to be too insulting to the previous caller, but I've noticed a growing trend in people just wanting to be outraged about things. And so they're quick to jump onto issues that they take offense to. And it's sort of a fanfare thing because they spread around rapidly too. Suddenly on Facebook, you're getting all these outraged reshares of whatever the latest outrage is. And I think there's a big communication breakdown in general. There's been a big divide. People are moving further and further into their respective corners and becoming more and more intolerant of people on the opposite side of the political spectrum from them. But right. You've got a heck of a lot of people who are just seeing everything that isn't 100% acceptance of whatever it is that they believe in as something that is worthy of being attacked.
Right.
So it's this puritanical approach to everything. Puritanical approach to continuing to want to live the way that you've always lived, even if it has problems. And a puritanical approach to trying to change those people and make them not live in that way. So that's why people are often talking about feminazis, for example.
Right.
And, that's definitely a problem. I don't know how big of a problem it is. I don't really know anybody quite like that. But, there's definitely people on the right who are saying that there are people that are trying to force them to be something other than what they want to be. And I think there's a lot of people who do need to change their attitude and change the way that they're expressing themselves in life because they're doing harm to others and they don't want to change. But at the same time, I think a lot of the aggressive approach from people on the other side is pushing people away as well. And I think it's just that nobody wants to yield. Nobody wants to give. Everybody wants a purist, 100%. My way is the right way. Nothing else, matters. And I think that's just causing this problem.
Yeah, I think, some of it has to do with being a Christian and an overt Christian in the metal community because you're gonna get criticisms of pretty much everything about you. And, we made the decision pretty early on to say, well, you know what? Maybe we can shut the hell up and actually listen to these people. Before you go off and make your defenses or something, maybe you actually listen to what they have to say. Because, and we've been blessed by it. We haven't been, it wasn't a sacrifice to say, let's hear these people out. It was, we've really been blessed by it, and it's expanded our thought process a lot, and we've gained, friends through it. So to me, it's like, okay, any subject that comes up now, it's like, okay, it's all up for grabs now. Let's have a discussion and let's see. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I've really liked your approach. You've done an interesting job for someone that I wouldn't have expected to do. I of course had a very different perspective on evangelical or, people who believe, that 100% of the Bible is truthful. The non-casual Christians, I had a very different opinion of them until I saw you guys.
I appreciate that. So, what is you kind of shared something about 20 minutes ago that was kind of heart-wrenchingly whatever, and I don't know if you want to share it again, but if you want to, go for it, about how it's affected you.
Yeah, I got a lot of abuse, not just from peers, from male peers, but from teachers. And I was picked on a lot for being effeminate and overly emotional when I was young, and I was presenting as male at the time. I didn't really understand what was going on with me. I knew that I felt more, akin with the girls, but teachers wouldn't let me associate with the girls oftentimes. Boys would tease me for, being seen associating with the girls, and boys would bully me a lot. And then the male teachers would often insult me and pick on me for being more feminine. And over time, I did become desensitized and just became sort of a very emotionless person. At one point in my teens, I was very misanthropic. I just kind of looked at everybody as being a problem and saw humanity in whole as just a toxic mess that I didn't have much faith in. And so all I really felt was either contempt or coldness, or just a lack of emotion. And it was problematic for me. I had difficulty being able to associate with others. Like, I didn't understand when they would be hurt by something, or why they would react emotionally about things, because I was desensitized and I had lost touch with my own emotions because I've been bullied so much. So as a safety mechanism was to just stop feeling. And it took me about until 32, I'd say, is about the age where I felt like I was starting to recognize the broader scope of emotion that was within me.
Z, would you
and
say...
it was a conscious effort to figure that out.
Would you say, if you, looking back, that the description of turning off your emotions or whatever, did that essentially keep you alive? Or if you could go back in time to younger Z, you would have been able to offer an alternative?
It did, in a way, help keep me alive. It provided me certain survival instincts, in a way. I probably would like to change that, though, because I got into a lot of trouble as a result of being a very emotionless person in my teens. It didn't jive well with a lot of the world that I just grew up in. And in adulthood, it made it difficult for me to have relationships with people, like intimate relationships. So I would have liked to go back and find a way to provide the younger me the means to continue feeling and being an emotional person, but also to find a way to survive. Right. I don't know what that way would be, other than, having rooted out toxic masculinity, generations earlier.
Do you believe that men are inherently toxic?
No. I know people who are on the like border of that, and they kind of feel that way. But sometimes they'll have like a few male friends that they're like, well, you're the exception. But no, I don't feel that way myself. I have definitely felt a lot of the ramifications of toxic masculinity. It hit me pretty hard. I was definitely tormented quite a bit. But I knew other boys who were not like that, and they were raised differently. Their fathers were more emotionally in touch with their sons and communicated with them more. And so I think that made a big difference for them. So over time, I found people here and there, but honestly, they were the outcasts too. So I was kind of accumulating male friends that were outcasts because other boys would torment them.
It's interesting because my son is extremely sensitive. My oldest, he's extremely sensitive. And, we've tried together about stuff and such because, he's had a rough go at it. And he, and the other side of it is he's also extremely intelligent, which probably goes together. And he's, you and him would have been really, really good friends. For sure.
Yeah, I worry when I see that, and some of my friends' kids, I'm just worried about what's going to happen. Are they going to get tormented? I mean, you're homeschooling, so it's going to be a little different for you. But for some of my friends where their kids are going to, schools outside of the home, I get worried. And like, boy, I hope they continue being the way that they are, but I'm worried that it's going to get pummeled out of them.
Yeah, it is. I don't even think about it too long. The idea that these kids, because there's the social media aspect of it that we didn't even have to go through. The hell that we went through in school, that adds there's no respite at all for these kids. Mm-hmm. And it's brutal. Like literally thousands of people can take part in mocking you.
And it is very brutal.
When you were a kid, you're like, the whole world's against me, and your parents could say, the whole world isn't against you. But literally, these kids now, it's like, no, seriously, Mom, there's some girl from Italy that's making fun of me, and she's Italian. She lives in fucking Italy. It breaks my heart to think. Like I said, I don't really think a lot about, because it literally kills me to think of a lot of these beautiful kids that are in that environment, unprotected, and then they go home and there's no respite, and then they got a dad telling them, I think it's I think it's tough. I think a lot of these kids that make it out of high school and give themselves enough time to make it out of college, I think they're really, really, really heroic. I really do, and I don't use that term lightly because I can't imagine it.
Yeah, with the people who are denying toxic masculinity or trying to do a false equivalency with toxic femininity, the reality is, and I don't want to just make something up, but from what I can tell, is that they just don't want to change. Plain and simple. They don't want to have to stop and think about their approach to life and make the mental effort to, analyze it, look at the differences, and then take the effort to actually change themselves. And that's where the outrage is really coming from. And I realize that there is a lot of miscommunication of this, but the level of outrage that we're seeing is just, it's just people on their sides saying, there's absolutely nothing wrong with what I'm doing, stop bugging me. And it's just going to continue as long as people keep pretending that it's not an issue or doing this false equivalency thing. You did a really good job of explaining it to the callers and pointing out the difference in that you've got an environment where women don't have nearly as much power as men. And so the male toxicity has a profound impact, and has a profound impact on everybody. It negatively affects men across the board, well, young boys basically, and it creates this perpetual problem where it is just essentially preying on people that are perceived as weaker.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a friend who had a really interesting theory about this, and it's apparently not an uncommon theory for anthropologists as well, that we had advanced ourselves into organized society in cities rather rapidly, and we never really got to the point where we could taper off from our earlier traits, of being the hunters and the gatherers, and being able to go off on the hunting trips, with the other men and with the boys that are approaching manhood, and getting out those instincts, the hunting instincts, having the camaraderie, then coming back to the community and being a part of the community, and that these drives are still within us, but we created these city situations so rapidly, and we started phasing out other forms of labor that would help express those same desires. We started, factory farming animals, so there's not a lot of hunting anymore. And, all these different things that have been sort of taken away that are normally the palette of humanity in its expression, and various innate drives and urges that we have to express those they're not there anymore. So we're kind of languishing, and we're in these advanced civilizations where everything is provided to us at the grocery store. And I think in a way it's kind of right. I mean, my sample size is obviously very different, but friends of mine that go out on, take trips and go out into the wilderness and go and do hunting or go and do archery and stuff like that are actually some of the least toxic people that I know when it comes to their masculinity.
Right.
And there's something about their expression of who they are as a person. They're very confident in themselves and their masculinity, and they don't push it on anybody else. They don't torment people that are weaker than them or point out their flaws. They're just very comfortable with who they are in their role. And so it seems that they're pretty healthy in their expression of masculinity, and they're doing a lot of the same things that men did historically before we were as advanced and, automating all these things like the hunting and the gathering.
Yeah, I read this. I don't know how this is probably going to be terrible, but somebody had mentioned something. Alec was going back and forth with this other atheist guy. It was a very interesting conversation. And
I remember that.
Here we go. It's a decade since the biologist Randy Thornhill and the anthropologist Craig Palmer published The Natural History of Rape. In the book, they made an argument that, however obnoxious at first glance, seemed to many to follow straightforwardly from the logic of natural selection. Basically, that we initially, when this whole thing started, that rape was the primary way of, procreation and gene modification and all the rest of it. And of course, now we look at that as obviously toxic behavior, but, from that paradigm, it was a necessity to get the thing going. And I think I'm hearing what you're saying is that, we were hunter-gatherers, and so we had to be a certain type of rugged kind of, the things that we're looking at as toxic now were essential to survival in the world until we were able to, civilize ourselves. Is it pretty much what you're saying?
Yeah.
And so that's like
we've got a lot of uncivilized urges in a civilized environment.
Our urges or our paradigms haven't caught up to our realities. It's like, hey, we made it. Mm-hmm. You don't need to, whatever anymore because we made it.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah.
So I think it has a lot of validity. I haven't personally looked into it, but that's what a friend of mine told me who is an anthropologist. And from anecdotal examples in my own life, I can say, well, it does kind of stack up. So.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah. It makes a ton of sense to me. It's interesting. You look at the Bible, the very ancient sort of primordial. There's a phrase about powerful men or powerful males taking whatever women they want, and that precipitates the flood in Genesis 6, actually. So it's just a very interesting paradigm. But okay, so I gotta go because my girl's in bed. She needs her massage, and we're gonna watch our movie. I'm gonna play Madden.
Yep.
Thank everybody who shared their stories, shared really, really personal stories. Thank you guys for that. Thank you to everybody that disagreed. Thank you for Nathan for explaining his perspective on it. Thank you to Steve for explaining your perspective on it. Thank you to Sori. Thank you to all you guys. I just want to make sure everybody understands. Steve and I are good. That's my guy. I love him. Nathan and I are good. That's my guy. I love him. The whole point of this is we're all going to talk to each other, exchange ideas, share our beliefs, share our convictions, and we're allowed to do it stridently, and we're allowed to do it with some passion and emotion. I love it. It doesn't mean that we don't love each other. It just means that we disagree with each other, and that's okay as long as we're listening to each other, and I trust that that's what happened. So, if you heard something today or heard a paradigm that you didn't, that you on the other side of, I hope that you slowed down and tried to listen. Maybe, in the heat of the battle, you're not that, amenable to hearing a different side, but maybe if you listen to it again and you can say, okay, what is the person actually saying? You'll notice that when Steve and Sori were going back and forth, I generally just kept my mouth shut and didn't say anything because I was really, really listening out for what he was trying to say. So anyway, guys, that's the spirit of Middle America. I love you all. You guys are great. Zonia, you're great. I'm going to see you soon, right?
Yep.
All right, so I'm going to see you in NAM.
You get my song, too?
Yeah, that's already done. It's just a matter of when we're going to release it.
Well, the birthday song, because I just did... we just sent it to you over Trello, I think.
It's the Suffer the Children, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's already cut and taped, bro. It's done.
Oh, you did it! Wow.
Yeah,
Today?
we don't play around. That I was talking to. I'm looking at it now with. Yeah, so it's already good. We're good.
Cool. That was fast.
Well, I mean, we saw the email, and then I was, who is it? I always associate Trello with Peter and with Damon Sage because he usually does all my updates. So, but yeah, it's already there. We're really, really trying to get ahead.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you guys have a good day or good night. And I'm looking forward to the next fireside.
Yeah, so we cut the your song was the last one we did, and then right after that we fired up the fireside. So.
Wow, very cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, take care.
All right, much love, guys. Much love to all of you. Vin out. Well, I'm gonna say Vin out. Hold on. How do I do this? Oh, there it is. Vin out. Sori out. Zonia out. Gone.